One of these. The jack-o'-lantern.
Now, this episode's a bit special. It's going to be a bit difficult to cover this guy without any bias because he's actually one of my favorite heroes just in general. I love his whole vibe and design. I love his voice lines. I love his continuity. I love that he ditches his sword for a cool new axe. But yeah, you're going to have to kind of meet me at the middle for this, especially since the first point I'm about to make might sound a little bit odd to anyone who's listened to me for the past little while. So you know how Katha was nutty and weird because she has so many different uses and abilities, especially ones that you wouldn't typically think of or intend with her? Well, I'm gonna prove the opposite case with Jack. Something I like about Jack-o'-lantern is that it's sort of the same logic they applied to Azra, where every ability he has kind of works with the last. Like, you know what a hero with low health would really want? He would want some armor. And you know what else he would want? A couple of troops that he can summon. Which I think is actually why he can teleport. With all these abilities, microing him is interesting. You could drop his ghouls down in one lane and then teleport him to the next so he can defend both sides, or you can make a combined force with both him and his ghouls. It also helps that his options help his units a whole lot. He can reduce enemy density with his ranged attack or push them back with his hero spell, or even get rid of their resistances if you get them close enough. I think that's sort of the beauty of Jack-o'-lantern. You can use him however you want and whenever you want. At the same time, he invites you to micro him often and figure out when and where his abilities work best. A good way to balance a hero in this game is to equalize the input between the hero and the player, and I think they do that pretty well here. I know people don't usually look highly upon generalists in tower defense games, mostly because they're either too much or too little, sometimes both at the same time, although I think there's a good fix here. But in a weird way, Jack kind of feels like he was built like a specialist, but then they spread him out from there. At one moment you could have him stalling, or then move him to ranged support, or have him take out one specific big enemy just by himself. The player chooses whether they want to mix him up or keep him as a static hero, and I kinda like that. It wouldn't work nearly as much if he didn't have all these abilities that bounced off each other as much as they do, and I think that's why he can remain viable for so long without ever really breaking the game. A perfect balance you would kinda want to strike with a hero like this. When I talked about Katha, I sort of mentioned how her and Jack-o'-lantern are the two sides of the same coin. Two generalist-designed heroes with completely different approaches, and I think I kind of finally figured out what I mean by all that. When I mention a hero being nutty, I mainly mean they have a weird gimmick, or they go above what you usually expect of them, judging by what you kind of build in your head when you're using them. Katha sort of feels like an all-arounder on accident. While she's mainly a good wall and support, she then goes into range to support as well. It's kind of odd, but it kind of helps her out in the same way, which is why I think nutty heroes aren't inherently poorly designed at all. They're just odd. On the other side, balanced heroes are typically very self-contained. They do what they're supposed to, they do what they're good at, and it all works out pretty well for them. A balanced hero's toolkit will circle around itself and create a satisfying loop. A nutty hero's toolkit will zigzag all over the place, and still be satisfying in a weird way. It's not to say balanced heroes are simple or boring. Matter of fact, I think Jack is one of the most complex balanced heroes, alongside Dante. Foreshadowing. At the end of the day, there's just a lot to like about this headless guy, especially considering how much they made out of how little they had in Frontiers. But even then, he was a pretty good mini-boss, too. While he's not my favorite hero in Vengeance, he gets pretty close. He stands out a lot without forcing it, and honestly, he's just generally well designed. Everything works for him. This got way more in depth than I wanted it to be, but I guess that's kinda just what happens when you gush about one of your favorite heroes. Anyways, the main takeaway from this is obviously just to use Jack.
The pumpkin